In the small, weathered house at the edge of town, young Jennifer sat on the creaky wooden floor, her eyes fixed on the solitary photo of her father in uniform. The room was dim, the only light coming from a flickering candle, casting long shadows that danced on the walls. Her mother, a frail figure wrapped in a shawl, sat beside her, her eyes filled with a mix of sadness and pride. "Your father was a brave man," her mother whispered, breaking the silence. "He fought for what he believed in. For us." Jennifer looked up, her young face etched with curiosity. "Tell me about him, Mama. Tell me about the war." Her mother sighed, a distant look in her eyes. "It was a difficult time, Jennifer. The country was torn, families were separated. Your father. He was a hero. He saved lives, stood firm in the face of danger. Did he ever get scared?" Jennifer asked, her voice barely above a whisper. Her mother smiled faintly. "Bravery isn't about not feeling fear, Jenny. It's about facing it head on. Your father was scared many times, but he never let it stop him." Jennifer clutched the photo, tracing her finger over her father's face. "I wish I could remember him. You have his spirit in you, Jennifer. He lives on through you," her mother said, gently tucking a strand of hair behind Jennifer's ear. The room fell silent again, the only sound being the wind howling outside, as if mourning the loss of the man in the photo. Jennifer's thoughts were a whirlwind of images she'd pieced together from her mother's stories, battles, heroism, and sacrifice. Suddenly, there was a knock at the door. Jennifer's mother tensed, a look of worry crossing her face. Jennifer watched as she slowly rose to answer it. At the door stood a man in a military uniform, his hat held in his hands. "Ma'am, I'm Sergeant Hayes. I served with your husband. I wanted to pay my respects," he said, his voice rough with emotion. Jennifer's mother nodded, inviting him in. The sergeant's eyes fell on Jennifer, and he knelt down to her level. "You must be Jennifer. I knew your father well. He was a great man. He spoke of you all the time," he said, his eyes glistening. "Did he tell you any stories?" Jennifer asked eagerly. The sergeant chuckled. "Oh, many. He had a story for every occasion. But the one he loved most was about the day you were born. He said it was the happiest day of his life." Jennifer's eyes shone with a mixture of joy and sadness. She felt a connection to the father she never knew, a bond forged through stories and memories. As the sergeant shared tales of her father, Jennifer's imagination took flight. She envisioned her father in distant lands, a figure of courage and honor. Each story added a layer to the image she had of him, painting a portrait of a man who, though absent, was ever present in her life. That night, as Jennifer lay in her bed, she clutched the photo of her father close to her heart. She felt a deep sense of pride and a longing to live up to the legacy he had left behind. The echoes of war had shaped her world, but in them, she found the strength to face her own battles. Her father's stories were not just tales of the past, they were beacons of hope, guiding her towards a future she was yet to write.
The days following Sergeant Hayes' visit were filled with a renewed sense of connection for Jennifer to her father's memory. However, the reality of her present situation often clashed with these poignant reflections. Their small home, with its peeling paint and creaky floors, was a constant reminder of the hardship Jennifer and her mother faced. On a particularly chilly morning, Jennifer found her mother in the kitchen, attempting to light the old stove. "The darn thing's being stubborn again," her mother muttered, frustration lining her voice. Jennifer, pulling a cardigan tighter around her, approached to help. "Let me try, Mama," she offered, taking the matchbox. As they worked together, a fragile flame finally came to life, casting a warm glow in the dim kitchen. Jennifer's mother sighed in relief, a tired smile on her face. "You always manage to fix things, Jenny." Jennifer looked up, worry etching her features. "Are you feeling okay, Mama? You look a bit pale." Her mother waved off the concern. "Just a bit under the weather. Nothing to fret about. You know I have my good days and bad days." It was a pattern Jennifer knew all too well. Her mother's health was a fluctuating tide, sometimes strong and vibrant, other times weak and bedridden. The uncertainty of it cast a shadow over their daily life, with Jennifer often taking on more responsibilities than a child her age should. Later that day, as Jennifer returned from school, she found her mother curled up on the couch, a blanket drawn tight around her. "School was okay, Mama." "Mrs. Jenkins said my essay was the best in class," Jennifer said, trying to sound cheerful. Her mother's eyes brightened momentarily. "That's wonderful, Jenny. I always knew you had a way with words, just like your father." Jennifer sat beside her, taking her mother's hand. "I wish things were easier for you, Mama. I wish I could do more." Her mother squeezed her hand gently. "You're doing more than you know, my dear. Just having you here is a blessing. Don't you worry about me. We'll get through this, we always do." That night, as Jennifer lay in bed, she couldn't help but feel the weight of their situation. The silence of the house seemed to echo with the unsaid words and unshed tears of her mother. Jennifer knew that their life was a fragile shelter against the storms of the world, but within its walls, there was an unspoken strength, a bond that no hardship could break. As she drifted to sleep, Jennifer made a silent promise to herself and to the memory of her father. She would be the pillar her mother needed, a beacon of hope in their small world. She would write a different story for them, one where the echoes of hardship would be overshadowed by the melody of perseverance and love. The school bell rang, signaling the end of another grueling day. Jennifer shuffled out of the classroom, her head down, hoping to go unnoticed. As she navigated the crowded hallways, she couldn't help but feel the sting of isolation. Her worn-out shoes, hand-me-down clothes, and the ever-present shadow of poverty set her apart from her peers. As she approached her locker, a group of girls from her class huddled nearby, their laughter piercing the air. Jennifer tried to ignore them, focusing on gathering her books, but their voices grew louder. "Did you see what Jennifer is wearing today? It's like a blast from the past," one girl sneered. "Yeah, like the poverty fashion past," another chimed in, sending the group into fits of laughter. Jennifer's hands trembled as she clutched her books. She wanted to run, to escape their cruel words, but she stood frozen. Suddenly, a voice cut through the laughter. "Hey, leave her alone. What's wrong with you guys?" It was Michael, a boy from her class, known for his kindness. The girls fell silent, their amusement fading under his disapproving gaze. Jennifer looked up, meeting Michael's eyes. There was a moment of unspoken understanding, a fleeting connection in the midst of her turmoil. "Thanks," Jennifer murmured as the girls dispersed. "Don't listen to them, Jennifer. They're just ignorant," Michael said, his voice gentle. "I know, but it still hurts," Jennifer replied, her voice barely above a whisper. Michael nodded. "I know it's tough, but you're stronger than you think. You have something they'll never have, real courage and character." Jennifer smiled weakly, touched by his words. "Thanks, Michael. That means a lot." As they parted ways, Jennifer felt a small glimmer of hope. The school, her cruel arena, was a place of battles, both visible and invisible. But in that brief encounter with Michael, she realized that not all battles were lost, and not all people were unkind. That evening, Jennifer sat at her desk, lost in thought. She opened her journal, a gift from her mother, and began to write. The words flowed from her pen, a cascade of emotions, fears, and dreams. Writing became her refuge, a place where she could express her true self, unjudged and unafraid. As she wrote, Jennifer began to see her experiences at school in a different light. Each mocking word, each cruel laugh, was a test of her resolve, a challenge to her spirit. She was more than the clothes she wore, or the poverty she endured. She was a person of strength and resilience, shaped by her struggles, but not defined by them. Jennifer closed her journal, feeling a sense of release. The school would continue to be her arena, but she would no longer be just a silent spectator to her own life. She would fight back with her words, her intelligence, and her unwavering spirit. The echoes of the day's cruelty still lingered, but in her heart, Jennifer knew she was not alone. She had allies, like Michael, and she had her own inner strength, a force more powerful than any ridicule or mockery. After Jennifer returned from school, she received sad news. After a long illness, her mother died. and she was forced to move to live with her Aunt Linda. The sun had barely risen when Jennifer was awakened by the familiar, stern voice of her Aunt Linda. "Jennifer, time to get up." "There's plenty to be done," Linda called out, her tone brooking no argument. Jennifer rubbed her eyes, still heavy with sleep, and made her way to the kitchen. The small, cluttered space was dominated by Linda's presence. "Good morning, Aunt Linda," Jennifer greeted her, trying to sound cheerful, despite the dread that filled her mornings. Linda glanced over, her expression as hard as the life she had led. "Morning. First, you'll help me with breakfast. Then there's laundry and cleaning. And don't forget, you need to run down to the store later. We're low on supplies." Jennifer nodded, a sense of resignation settling over her. Life under Linda's roof was a far cry from the days spent with her mother. Here, every day was a string of chores and responsibilities, leaving little room for the joys of childhood. As Jennifer cracked eggs into a frying pan, Linda continued, her voice sharp. "And make sure you get a good price at the store. Talk to Mr. Thompson, he owes me a favor. And we need more of our special supplies." Jennifer's heart sank at the mention of the special supplies, the moonshine Linda occasionally sold to make ends meet. It was a risky and uncomfortable task for Jennifer, but one she couldn't refuse. "Aunt Linda, is it okay to keep doing that?" "It doesn't feel right," Jennifer ventured, her voice tentative. Linda turned sharply, her eyes narrowing. "Jennifer, we do what we must to survive. You think I like living like this? You think I enjoy sending you out for these things? Life is tough, and we need to be tougher." Jennifer lowered her gaze, the weight of Linda's words pressing down on her. She understood her aunt's struggles, but it didn't ease the burden of her tasks. Later that day, as Jennifer walked to the store, she felt the familiar knot of anxiety in her stomach. The task of bargaining with Mr. Thompson, a stern man with little patience for haggling, was daunting. But the thought of the moonshine weighed even heavier on her mind. At the store, Jennifer approached Mr. Thompson, her voice barely above a whisper. "Mr. Thompson, my aunt sent me. She said you might be able to give us a discount on some things." Mr. Thompson eyed her skeptically. "Your aunt always wants something for nothing. What does she need this time?" Jennifer listed the items, avoiding his gaze. As the transaction concluded, Mr. Thompson's demeanor softened slightly. "You're a good girl, Jennifer. It's not easy, what you're doing for your aunt. You remind me of your father, always looking out for others." Jennifer's heart swelled at the mention of her father. It was a small comfort, but it gave her the strength to complete her next task. As night fell and Jennifer lay in bed, the events of the day replayed in her mind. Life with Aunt Linda was hard, filled with challenges and moral dilemmas. But it was also shaping her, teaching her resilience and the harsh realities of life. Jennifer closed her eyes, making another silent promise, this time to herself: she would endure, she would adapt, but she would never let the world harden her heart. Jennifer sat at the old, scarred kitchen table, her hands fidgeting with the frayed edge of the tablecloth. Aunt Linda paced the room, her words coming out in a torrent. "It's settled, Jennifer. Mr. Thompson has agreed. You'll marry his son, Peter. It's a good match. It'll secure our future." Jennifer's heart sank. The prospect of marrying Peter, a man she hardly knew and certainly didn't love, felt like a prison sentence. "But Aunt Linda, I don't want to marry Peter. I don't love him," she protested, her voice trembling. Linda stopped pacing and turned to face her. "Love? This isn't about love, Jennifer. This is about survival. You think I wanted this? No, but we don't have the luxury of choice. This will clear our debts, give us a better life." Jennifer's mind raced. She thought of her mother, her gentle spirit and enduring hope, even in the face of despair. She thought of her father, who had fought for freedom, not just for his country, but for the ideals he cherished. And here she was, being asked to give up her own freedom, her own dreams. "Aunt Linda, I want to choose my own path. I want to study, to work, to make something of myself. Marrying Peter won't solve our problems. It'll just create new ones, Jennifer argued, her resolve strengthening. Linda's face hardened. You think you know better? You're just a child. I've made sacrifices for you, and now it's your turn. We need this, Jennifer. The room filled with a tense silence. Jennifer looked at her aunt, seeing the weariness and desperation in her eyes. She understood Linda's struggles, but she couldn't let her own life be sacrificed for them. Aunt Linda, I'm sorry. I can't do this. I need to make my own choices, live my own life. I'm not my father or my mother. I'm me, Jennifer, and I have to find my own way, she said, her voice firm. Linda's expression softened slightly, a hint of understanding flickering in her eyes. I know you think you're doing what's best for you, but life is harsh. You'll see that. Sometimes, we have to do things we don't want to. Jennifer stood up, her decision clear in her mind. I understand that, Aunt Linda. But I also understand that I need to be true to myself. I'll find a way to help, to contribute, but not like this. Not by giving up on who I am. As Jennifer left the kitchen, she felt a mix of fear and exhilaration. She was stepping into the unknown, but for the first time, she felt in control of her destiny. She knew the road ahead would be difficult, but she was ready to face it. In her heart, she carried the strength of her parents, the lessons from her past, and a burning desire to carve her own path, one step at a time. Jennifer stood by the window, gazing out at the early morning light that draped the quiet street. Today marked a significant turn in her life's journey. Her decision to reject the arranged marriage with Peter had set a chain of events in motion, events she was only beginning to understand. Aunt Linda entered the room, her expression a complex mix of resignation and concern. Jennifer, have you thought this through? Rejecting the Thompsons' offer, it's not just about you. Our situation is dire. Jennifer turned to face her aunt, her resolve clear in her eyes. I have thought about it, Aunt Linda. I know our situation is tough, but I can't marry someone I don't love. I can't live a life that's chosen for me. There has to be another way. Linda sighed, the lines of hardship etched deep in her face. You're so much like your mother, always dreaming of a better, fairer world. I wish I could believe in that world too. Jennifer approached her aunt, her voice gentle yet firm. We can make it better, Aunt Linda. I want to work, to study. I can contribute. We don't have to settle for this. Linda looked at her, a glimmer of hope in her weary eyes. And what about the debts? The daily struggles? You think a job will solve all that? It's a start, Jennifer replied. I'll find a job, any job. I'll save money for school. I want to be a teacher, Aunt Linda. I want to make a difference, like my parents did. Linda's expression softened, a rare smile breaking through. Your parents would be proud, Jennifer. I'm sorry for trying to decide your life for you. Maybe I've been too scared to hope for better. Jennifer reached out, taking her aunt's hands in hers. We'll face it together, Aunt Linda. We'll find a way through the hardships. Later that day, Jennifer walked through the town, her steps filled with a new sense of purpose. She stopped at a local cafe, the help wanted sign in the window catching her eye. Taking a deep breath, she pushed the door open and approached the counter. Hello, I saw the sign outside. Are you still looking for help? Jennifer asked the woman behind the counter, her voice steady despite her racing heart. The woman, with a warm smile, nodded. Yes, we are. Do you have any experience? Not much, but I'm a quick learner and I'm willing to work hard, Jennifer replied, her determination shining through. After a brief conversation, the woman, Mrs. Collins, agreed to give Jennifer a trial period. You remind me of myself when I was your age. Eager to carve out my own path. Let's see what you can do. As Jennifer walked back home, her first paycheck in her pocket, she felt a profound sense of achievement. She had taken her first step towards independence, towards a future she would write herself. That night, Jennifer lay in bed, reflecting on the day. She had stood at a crossroads and chosen her path, one that led towards hope and self-determination. The road ahead was uncertain, filled with challenges and obstacles, but Jennifer knew she had the strength to face them. She was no longer just a girl under her aunt's roof or a student in a cruel school. She was Jennifer, a young woman with dreams, courage, and the will to shape her own destiny. Years had passed since Jennifer had made the courageous decision to carve her own path. Now, she stood in front of a classroom, her eyes reflecting the vibrant spirit of the young minds before her. She was a teacher, a mentor, a guide, role she had dreamt of and worked tirelessly towards. After class, as Jennifer organized her papers, a young girl approached her desk timidly. "Ms. Jennifer, can I talk to you for a moment?" Jennifer looked up and smiled warmly. "Of course, Emily. What's on your mind?" Emily fidgeted with the hem of her shirt, her eyes downcast. I've been having a hard time at home. My parents, they're always fighting, and I feel so lost." Jennifer's heart ached with empathy. She remembered her own struggles, the feelings of helplessness and isolation. "Emily, I'm here for you. You're not alone. I understand how hard it can be. When I was your age, I faced many challenges too." Emily's eyes widened in surprise. "You did?" Jennifer nodded. "Yes. Life was tough. There were times I felt lost, just like you. But I learned something important: our struggles don't define us. They shape us into stronger, more compassionate people." Emily's expression softened, a hint of hope flickering in her eyes. "How did you get through it?" Jennifer leaned forward, her voice sincere. "By believing in myself, by holding on to hope, and by seeking help when I needed it. There's strength in asking for support, Emily. It's okay to not be okay." Emily nodded, a small smile breaking through. "Thank you, Ms. Jennifer. Talking to you, it makes me feel better." As Emily left the room, Jennifer felt a profound sense of fulfillment. She was more than just a teacher, she was a beacon of hope for these young souls, much like the mentors who had guided her. Later that evening, Jennifer visited her Aunt Linda, now a much softer, kinder woman, transformed by the years and by Jennifer's unwavering love and support. They sat together, sipping tea, reminiscing about the past and marveling at the present. "You've come so far, Jennifer," Linda said, her eyes misty. "You've turned your hardships into something beautiful. You're helping these kids, giving them hope." Jennifer reached across, squeezing her aunt's hand. "I couldn't have done it without you, Aunt Linda. You pushed me, challenged me. It made me who I am." Linda smiled, pride and love evident in her eyes. "I always knew you were meant for great things." That night, as Jennifer wrote in her journal, now filled with years of reflections, she pondered the journey she had undertaken. From the shadows of her past had emerged a story of resilience, hope, and the unyielding power of the human spirit. Her life was a testament to the idea that no matter how dark the night, the dawn of hope always breaks through, bringing with it the light of new possibilities and the promise of a brighter tomorrow.